story about the breakfast button. My wife and I one day were sitting down eating breakfast at this cafe, and we were talking about mobile games and some of the mobile games that I had developed in the past. And so as we were going through this, we were kind of thinking, what would be like the ultimate mobile game that you could create? What would be maybe even the stupidest game that you could possibly create? So as we were kind of brainstorming it, she came up with this brilliant idea. She says, you know, with all the silly little apps that we see today, it's gone even beyond like how stupid Tetris was. Maybe we could just have one that the whole purpose of the game was just a giant button that somebody would just keep continuing to press and continuing to press. And so that kind of led to this whole discussion about how you could monetize something like this. And so we said, okay, sure. So when I got home, took a couple of hours, I banged that out real quick in Xcode, and I actually had a prototype. So then what I did was, you know, after we had this, and I ran it through a couple of simulations with Kim, she was laughing, and she was like, "This is the stupidest thing ever. It's just a button. You push the button. There's no purpose to it." So I said, sure. So I went ahead and submitted it to Apple to see if I could get it on the Apple Store. Well, that started this whole process with Apple, where the very first time it got submitted, it pretty much instantly got rejected. A couple of days later, it gets rejected. And the reason why it was rejected, because it didn't meet the design standards. See, now I didn't really have any clue that Apple did have these design standards, but I said, okay, so I went through their little checklist, modified everything, actually even put explainer videos and, snapshots and everything that they possibly asked for. I had it for different resolutions, different devices. I tested it out on a number of different devices, got the application where, mechanically it was working perfectly. Resubmitted. So then it got resubmitted, and it took a while to come back on that second time, but it came back with some comments from the engineer. And so then it started a dialogue between me and the engineer, where the engineer says, really the functionality of this looks pretty basic. It doesn't look like it's something that's of the quality that you would push out to the Apple Store. Said it looks like the entire purpose of this application is simply to press a button. And I was like, exactly, that's what makes it so brilliant. Well, we went back and forth, and he didn't understand how that would add any value, so he rejected it, sent it back to me, and said, no, that's you're going to have to do something. You have to add more functionality to it. And I actually kept all these rejection letters. At one time, I had them published out on my website just for grins, but then that started the next round of this. So what I did was I went and I modified a couple of things with the application, and I resubmitted it as an accessibility application. So I wrote up a whole medical thing that goes along with it that said the reason why the application exists is for repetitive stress injuries. So if somebody has a repetitive stress injury in their hand, they could use this to retrain their hand following a surgery or something like that. And again, I actually had some research to back up how something like this could add value. Although if you thought about it, if you played this thing for too long, it would probably cause carpal tunnel, and that's even a worse situation. But okay, so we said, yeah, we actually have something that you can use here that is adding value to it. So I resubmitted that, and that went through another cycle. Again, there were some really great exchanges back and forth with the reviewing engineer, and he finally just shut it off and said, no, this isn't going to make it up to the App Store. And so what I did was I took that and I transferred it over to Android, rewrote it in Android, and I did publish it up on the Google Play Store for a while. It's no longer available there, but I did make the source code available on my GitHub if anybody would like to pick it up and continue going with it. Those are out there. But what was one final little footnote on this is after this the dust had all settled, later on during a Thanksgiving dinner, I saw a note come across on my phone that my app was back being reviewed. And it had actually been opened back up for review, and then a couple of days later it went down. So I sent an email off to the same individual I was talking with and said, hey, I noticed that it's up for review. Does that mean you guys are reconsidering on it? And he's like, no. He says, as of all of the examples that we had, this was one that was one of the most hilarious, one of the most funny. And he said, I wanted to open it up and show up a couple of friends and show something. So they opened it back up just briefly, just so that he could show the code off, because he didn't have a local copy of the code at the time. So that's Breakfast Button. So now what I'm going to show you is the actual demonstration video that I included with the application. And by all means, if anybody would like to continue to collaborate on this or to build this out further, the source code's available out there, and I'd be happy to share any information you'd have as far as questions. Have a great one and enjoy this.